all about courage and maybe even stepping out of your comfort zone. These recipes are gonna have a lot of flexibility, but it's gonna be about trying them and then maybe adapting them to your own tastes. Courage is less about being perfect and it's more just about putting yourself out there. So, have some fun and enjoy cooking these different recipes. We are going to be making tacos in a bag, which is one of my favorites, and you actually don't need to serve it in a bag. You can really adapt it and make some burritos or make a taco salad. It's pretty much whatever. So we're gonna be So you're gonna wanna preheat your oven to around 400 degrees Fahrenheit and just get out a baking sheet and put it in the oven as well so it can preheat. With our tacos in a bag, we're gonna wanna prep our veggies or whatever we want in the actual bag beforehand. So I have some lettuce and tomatoes here, and then that way if we prep them now before, we can serve everything else warm. We're going to get our tofu out. So you don't have to use tofu for this recipe. If you're choosing to use beans or some sort of veggie mince, then you will just skip right to the next step. But if you're using tofu, I'm using about 350 grams, and you're just gonna wanna drain your tofu, and then you just use a paper towel, and I'm going to put it on here and just give it a squish. So I'm using extra firm tofu. You can use firm. So once we squish our tofu, we're going to just get a bowl out, and I only want to use 350 grams. So you can actually just kind of scramble it with your fingers, and it doesn't have to be too small because this will be, it'll cook the same size pretty much. And I like to have like a little bit of bigger chunks because it's similar to ground mince. So once we have all of our tofu in here, we are going to be using a little bit of oil just to help the spices stick on there. So I'm gonna use a tablespoon of oil, 1 teaspoon, maybe 2 if you like things really spicy. If not, then maybe just do 1 teaspoon of chili powder. And I'm going to add just a little bit more because I do like it spicy. And then we want 2 teaspoons of paprika. So I'm just using regular paprika, but you could use smoked in this recipe. I think it would work really well. Next, we'll have some cumin, and we're gonna do 1 teaspoon of cumin. And we're gonna add half a teaspoon of oregano. Approximately. And then last we will do our soy sauce, and we want about 1.5 tablespoons. So I like to add a little bit of maple syrup, not a lot, maybe a teaspoon or half a teaspoon's worth, just to give it a little bit of sweetness. And then you'll just be getting in there and giving it a mix. now we have our tofu kind of mix for the tacos in a bag. So I'm gonna just grab our pan out and I'm gonna actually put a little bit of oil on here. And I'm just gonna spread it around to coat the pan. So you can use a baking sheet or you can use whatever you choose to use to help it not stick. And you just wanna spread it around so it completely coats the pan. And then we will just add our mixture right onto there. And then you wanna just move it around so it is spread evenly on the pan. And the tofu can all cook at even paces without too much other tofu touching it. So we're gonna put this in the oven for around 15 minutes, and you're gonna wanna give it a little bit of a stir around about midway. So put it in the oven for 15 minutes and just make sure you check on it in between that time, because if you have smaller pieces of tofu, they might start burning, or you just wanna keep an eye on them and make sure you stir them around. So now we're gonna move on to the rest of our mix. I'm just gonna wipe a little bit of the tofu off. So just give your cutting board a clean and then get out your onion. So we're gonna wanna peel it. You can also use whatever onion you please in this recipe. It doesn't have to be white or yellow, it can be purple, it can be shallots. They would all taste good in this one. So just get it nice and clean. And we're gonna use just half an onion. So you can just cut it in half and put the other half aside. Now I'm gonna want this pretty thinly diced, so I'm going to turn it on its side and just really carefully cut down to the size that I want and do it one more time. So once you have them all relatively the same size, just go through and make sure that they are cut. And especially the big middle pieces. So you can even choose to do these ones a little bit thinner because we're going to be mixing them with the tofu. So you kind of saw how much we crumbled the tofu. So I'm gonna go through and just chop my onion a little bit smaller. And just throwing out any pieces where the skin maybe didn't come off quite right. Oop, and drop in onion. This onion is definitely strong. You can feel it in your eyes, in my eyes. So once we get this onion chopped, and you can go back in there if you had to take a break, like me, then we will just move it off to the side in our little bowl.
So once we finish with our onion, we're going to be using about 1 to 2 cloves of garlic, and we're just going to want to mince them nice and small.
Once it's all chopped, you can go ahead and put it off to the side in a separate bowl than the onion. And then we're gonna go ahead and get our mushrooms. I'm using about 4 today, but you can always add or eliminate these for your recipe, and I'm gonna cut them in half and in half. So cut them in half and then just do slices. So once we finish with our mushrooms, we're gonna get started with our bell pepper. You can use whatever color you want, and you can use however much of it you want. I'm gonna use about the whole thing. So we're just gonna go ahead and give it a chop, just really carefully. And just make sure there's no seeds in there. And then we just wanna kind of chop it into small slices. And you're gonna wanna cut them into even pieces. I'm gonna add 1 to 2 tablespoons of oil. We're gonna add our onion in. And we're gonna wanna let that cook down for 2 to 3 minutes. So just keep an eye on it, stir it around, make sure it's not burning. And then after 3-ish minutes, when it has had a chance to become a little bit clearer and you can really start to smell it, you're gonna go ahead and add in your peppers and your mushrooms and your garlic.
We're also going to be adding in a little bit of salt and pepper.
So once this has had a chance to cook down for, I would say 8 or 10 minutes, we're gonna add about 2 tablespoons of tomato paste and just a little bit of water. And you're just gonna wanna give it a good mix around. And it only needs maybe a minute or 2, and you can leave it kind of in the middle of this pan, just to give it a chance to warm up. And then we're gonna go ahead and add in our tofu mixture. So just give that a good mix around. And you can always add a little bit more water if you want, or you can add in a little bit more tomato paste. Okay. So we're gonna let this cook down for just a couple of minutes, and then it'll be ready to add into our tacos in a bag. Put together your tacos in a bag. You're gonna take a small pack of Doritos, cut off the corner lengthwise, and then cut it along. And now I don't usually like to use all of the chips, so I will put some aside, and then you give it a crunch. And you can put your meat mixture in there. I would do a couple of spoonfuls, and then you can just add in all the rest of your stuff.
And that is our tacos in a bag.